We are living in an interesting period when it comes to movies, for many reasons, but one trend is that in recent years, in fact in particular this year and next year, we have several big name old school film directors releasing movies, some of whom haven't made a film in years. Guys like Martin Scorsese, John Woo, Francis Ford Coppola, Ridley Scott and Michael Mann are just some of the directors with new movies that have been released or are coming out soon. But weirdly, many of the films that these guys have released have been disappointments, or they have subverted the expectations audiences had of them. In some ways, it's our fault. When it was announced that Martin Scorsese was making another gangster film, did we really think that it was going to be a retread of the likes of Goodfellas, which he made like 30 years ago? So when you watch The Irishman thinking, wait, why is this movie about an old guy in a wheelchair organising his funeral instead of a rock and roll epic mafia film? It speaks to where Scorsese is now mentally, and wanting an author like him to remake Goodfellas is quite frankly unfair. In other ways, it's the filmmaker's fault. Ridley Scott's Napoleon is quite simply not a good film, a far cry from the likes of Gladiator, which is over 20 years old. But unlike Scorsese, Scott has been trying and failing to recapture that magic of his older movies with films like Robin Hood and Alien Covenant. The Killer falls in this bracket of movies from veteran film directors whose latest movies have split audiences. I went into the movie knowing that a lot of David Fincher fans found it boring and ordinary. Others considered it a reflective masterpiece. I guess in some ways both sets of fans have merit to their opinion, and it goes back to what I said about where the filmmakers are in the current state of their careers. After all, is it fair to want Fincher to make the same kind of movies he did 25 years ago, as if he's had no evolution and personal growth? Well, actually maybe it is, as there hasn't been much thematic evolution to Fincher's career. Until now, maybe. At face value, The Killer is vintage Fincher. After a consistent movie career making thrillers, there was a big gap after Gone Girl, where he worked on the Netflix show Mindhunter, and after that he made his rather dull passion project Mank. But now he's back, and so is Michael Fassbender after about 4 years without a film, in a thriller following a professional hitman, an expert in his trade who must battle his employers after a hit goes wrong. It sounds right up Fincher's street, right? But, as many who have seen the film will argue, the final product is rather ordinary. It isn't terrible, but it's a straightforward movie about a professional assassin who goes about his business. There's no twists and turns, there isn't much tension, it's all a bit mediocre. Honestly, it feels like a movie that is dime a dozen on Netflix, one that you wouldn't look twice at had it not been made by David Fincher. Surely, he could have directed a film like this in his sleep. Yes, everything looks sleek and it's all very well shot, but Fincher is surely way above this kind of material. The script is so ordinary. There's no depth, no substance, no meat. It felt like a warm-up project for Fincher, one where he just makes sure he still got it. Maybe it was an excuse to test out a new camera or something, or he had an obligation in his contract for a new film with Netflix. The fact that The Killer is mid to lower tier Fincher speaks a lot to how captivating his movies usually are, and perhaps your enjoyment of this film, or lack thereof, will be massively influenced by how you went in. If you were like, yes, David Fincher is making another thriller about a hitman, can I make an educated guess and say you found the film rather dull? And if you just randomly came across this movie on Netflix, I hazard a guess that you didn't find it too bad, maybe kinda decent. The thing is though, the movie isn't really what it says on the tin. There's a gorgeous opening implying a whole host of dastardly grim murder techniques, but our man only really goes around shooting people with a silenced pistol. In his inner monologue, our man likes to talk himself up a lot, talking about the discipline needed for such a role. Trust no one. Do not give in to empathy. Stick to the plan. Things like that. But after a 20-minute intro to a hit, where he spends much of it hyping himself up, he misses his shot and hits a civilian, which kickstarts the events in the story. And it's not the last time he makes an error in the film. In fact, at one point, his speech that he constantly gives himself is interrupted mid-sentence. Another where he shoots a nail gun into a victim and tells us how the man will have about 6 or 7 minutes to live for him to be interrogated, only for him to die immediately, and Fassbender goes, shit. This is clearly by design though. Initially, you think to yourself, I'm really not seeing this hitman deliver on the hype he gives himself. What kind of stupid film is this? But as the film goes on, it clearly is either a case of him losing his touch at doing what he does best, or he was never that good to begin with. Maybe Fincher is making some kind of reflective meta-commentary on himself and his career here. The whole thing about working tirelessly for the perfect shot, but then screwing it up and course correcting sounds like a story from the set of a Fincher film. But either way, Fassbender's character is not as good as he thinks he is. The movie is going for a grounded feel, a realistic hitman movie where he gets sleepy or cold like us, and this is where some of the problems kick in. There's a lot of movies that follow characters in everyday situations. I just recently watched Ken Loach's Kes, which for the most part followed a few days in an ordinary boy's life. But there are compelling elements which keep us invested in such films. The killer, on the other hand, is intentionally cold and detached. So what am I supposed to be feeling when I watch him rent WeWork spaces, order tools off Amazon, have a moan about Airbnbs, load up his van, all sorts of mundane stuff which makes the film feel very dry? I can see what the film is doing here, but can we really criticize audiences if they find the killer a bit boring? The killer makes its point, but it could have done so in a more entertaining format. It may be thought-provoking, but did it need to be so tedious? Because as good or bad as it is, you ain't gonna remember this film in a couple of weeks. Maybe it'll fare better in a few years after Fincher has had a few more films under his belt and it's hidden away, snuggled in the middle of his filmography somewhere. But as a comeback movie, as a return to the kind of films that made Fincher famous, this ain't it. The Killer is secretly a comedy, a parody. A little frustrating, especially seeing as though I just watched Napoleon, which was something of a character assassination, taking the life of an interesting great man and turning him into a dork. And I am in the mood to watch a film that isn't desperate to subvert my expectations. The Killer has done something similar. It is taking the piss out of the main character. He spends the film hyping himself up as a great assassin, but he's clearly anything but. His inner monologue is cringe-inducing in some scenes, pseudo-philosophical mumbo-jumbo about him being a master of his own destiny and stuff like that. The elongated intro is a great example of this, all that planning and waiting and talking and pretentious hyping, only for him to miss the shot. Rinse and repeat. Meanwhile, he still thinks he's Leon the Professional, until maybe right until the very end of the film where he finally admits he's more of a normie than he first hoped. He thinks he's strong, resilient, cold, detached, the strong silent type, but in every facet of his life he is a hypocrite and the irony is lost on him. He eats McDonald's and tells us it's because it's cheap protein. Yeah, sure, it's definitely not because he loves the taste. The whole thing about having no attachments is another example. No connections, no emotions. Look how serious, cool and nihilistic I am. I am one of the few, not the many. And yet, he has a woman at home who he loves dearly like many of us, and in spite of him having a code of staying resilient and emotionless, he goes on a revenge tirade for her. The final confrontation with the billionaire is an interesting scene. As the killer himself says, killing a high-value person will bring a lot of heat, and he spent the film killing taxi drivers and low-level people. But here, he has the opportunity to kill the actual original client, a man of influence and wealth. And he chickens out because he's scared of the implications. Some might feel I'm seeing things that aren't there, but I do believe this was the intention of the film. A character assassination of an assassin character. To play on a line from the film, you can either be one of the few and accept that this is what the movie is trying to do, or you can be one of the many and be deluded into thinking Fincher just made a shit film. I think comparisons to The Irishman are apt, a movie that was sold as a retread into the epic world of the mafia, but the rug was pulled from beneath your feet, and Scorsese highlighted that the mob world was not one of honor and codes, but of egotistic maniacs who either die young or live out their lives lonely and old. Something similar is being done here. One could even argue Fincher is mocking his own filmography, the parts that people find cool where they miss the point. Fight Club comes to mind, a film misunderstood by many where they found themselves praising the antics and worldview of Brad Pitt's character a little too much. Fincher's filmography, the fights on Alien 3 and the disowning of it, the very existence of Fight Club, it has a bad boy counterculture vibe about it, the deep-thinking, brooding, nonconformist author. And I know I'm generalizing here, but a lot of his films are simply entertaining escapism, and maybe he's reached a stage in his career where he's mature enough to realize that. Fassbender's Killer isn't incompetent, so maybe it's not so much a parody, but the film is saying that these kind of people do exist. They do live by their philosophies and codes, but those codes are hollow. It's like the main character thought he was a force of nature, like Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men, and the entire movie was proving to him that he wasn't. So I think it's quite an interesting movie. Personally, I just wanted Fincher to make a thrilling drama about a hitman with loads of twists and turns, but he's chosen to turn that expectation and flip it on its head. Fair play. I'll probably never watch the film again. I didn't find it entertaining, but I can see what Fincher was trying to do, and I tip my hat to him. I actually didn't want to like the film because of how tedious I found it. I was ready to start roasting it in my review, but much like how I started to hate Scott's Napoleon the more I thought about it, the more I think about The Killer, the more I appreciate it. But please, Fincher, just please the little boy in me and make your next film an ultra cool cop drama or psycho thriller. Thanks for watching.